breaking down the NBA offseason, the wild trades, and some signings. Here with my guy, Stat Matt Robinson. No James Jackson today, but Matt and I are going to spend this 4th of July breaking down all of the moves. Matt, what's going on, my man?
Nothing much. Happy 4th to all our listeners. Just when we're recording this, having a nice vacation in North Carolina, after some good hard work, but got to talk about this NBA offseason. It's been crazy.
Yeah, it's like it kind of goes in stages where you have the tampering period where like 40% of the stuff that you like that's going to happen is made known. And so then that gets you nice and primed up. Like, okay, oh, PJ Tucker, oh, that's cool. Oh, they're going to max Trae Young and they're going to max John. And then you get the craziness that is the KD Kyrie situation, that is the Rudy Gobert trade. We'll get to it all. But let's start with John Wall finally donning an NBA uniform again. He got to collect his, 40-some million while just chilling out, having fun on the Houston Rockets bench. Sometimes not even on the bench. He was just allowed to do, I guess, whatever while they tanked. So he's bought out and then signed by the Clippers. So I guess where I want to start is, what John Wall do you expect the Clippers to get?
The best case scenario for the Clippers is that John Wall comes in just ready to be almost like a Jason Kidd on the Mavericks kind of situation. Like, knowing that he's not supposed to score more than 10 points a game. The difference between that and Jason Kidd is that Jason Kidd could shoot, and John Wall is famously like below average at threes. So he still has this incredible basketball mind. He still put up assist numbers when he played in Houston for those 42 games. But if you look at his percentages, they're way down across the board. So if he, I'm gonna change my analogy already. He needs to be like a Ricky Rubio type, just ball distributing, getting the ball into the right situations for Kawhi and Paul George. But I don't think this is anything other than a quality point guard, and that's all anyone should expect from him.
I mean, looking at their roster, like, I guess Reggie Jackson is actually listed as a shooting guard, but I think he is kind of their de facto point guard. Beyond that, they don't have a point guard on the roster. Jason Preston from Ohio University, who shot all the three-pointers. He's their only listed point guard as of right now. So, I think you get kind of a beefed-up version of Reggie Jackson. Remember, like, people like to forget, John Wall came back not this past year, but the year before that for the second half of the season with the Rockets, and showed he still had his fastball. He was still explosive on the break, and I think he averaged 21 points and just about 7 assists. So if he can add that to an already stacked, veteran, experienced, deep Clippers roster, Kawhi Leonard comes back, now you're really looking at like what we all thought the Clippers were going to be initially, which is a powerhouse.
Yeah, my thing with that is that when you average 21 and 7 on a team that's horrible, like, it's not that impressive because they're basically giving you reps just to see what's going on with you, and then they shut you down because wherever they want the young guys to play more, or you're too
good.
But so this is John Wall won't average more than 11 points per game this year on the Clippers. But I think that's okay, because I think it's more about the flow of the offense and how he fits in and how he can make the offense better than it is about him being an important scoring piece for the Clippers.
See, I put him more. I do view him. That's, I think, where we differ, because I think we both agree it's a net positive for Los Angeles to bring him in, but I view him more as like a 17 to 18 points per game, a guy who can, when you are, over accounting for Kawhi or over accounting for Paul George, can really just break your back in a playoff series because he's been there before. And as I said, I still think he has a bit of his fastball, but ultimately we'll see. He has not been, the one thing that is really the knock on him, obviously, is he hasn't been super available. And now this stat's a little skewed because it's including the season where he got paid to sit. but he's played 132 of 410 possible games in the last 5 years since 2018-19. So you don't know if the durability's there, and overall, I just think like if you are relying on him to be what I think he's going to be, you might be liable to get screwed because he won't be available come postseason time. But moving on to this one was a trade, and this one really kind of was the first. This was the gun to really the entire craziness that happened in free agency. DeJounte Murray moving to the Hawks for Danilo Gallinari and 3 first-round picks. Clearly makes that backcourt in Atlanta very solid on both sides of the ball. Trae Young's no longer going to be able to get picked on the defensive end. But from the Spurs side, I'm interested in hearing, what do you think they're doing?
They're tanking. They're absolutely tanking. Popovich has had enough of, ever since Kawhi left, they've been hovering in that 8, 9, 10 area of the West. And I think Pop is just sick of it. And he wants one more run at getting a superstar like Wembanyama before he retires. I think they're gonna buy out Gallinari or trade Gallinari for picks or something. I don't think Gallinari will play for the Spurs.
Yeah, I agree. I think he was rumored that he is going to get bought out. Maybe eventually. I don't know if they have other moves lined up to where he might not, and maybe they'll use him as a cap filler. But I had also read some rumors that they might be trying to move for Ayton. It does seem like they are trying to get back to the Popovich model of like, we need a big guy in the middle who's going to be able to play and dominate on both sides. I mean, we talk a lot about Ayton on our podcast. I think he could be that guy. Like what I'm wondering is he just like an Andre Drummond who plays a little bit of defense, or is he a guy who can really add to his game, and then be kind of your Karl Anthony Towns, Giannis type, big who can guard multiple positions, dominate in the painted area, but also can step outside, because that was a part of Ayton's game at Arizona. But regardless, I digress. Wembanyama, I think, is the guy to tank for. Now, the question is, will they be able to get him? Even if they don't, they do have those 3 other first-round picks. I just think, and it's funny because the Spurs were the model of success for about 20, 25 years. What are we doing where a 25-year-old in DeJounte Murray is too old? Maybe I can hear the case for being too good, but he's too old for a rebuild? They can't stash him and move some other pieces around?
Drew Holiday was like 24 when we traded Drew Holiday at the beginning of the process. Like it's not that ridiculous when you think about it, because you're just having to hit it's not about the player, it's about the reset button that you have to hit as a team. So like Drew Holiday had a really good career, but the Sixers had to make that trade no matter what, just independent of everything that happened with the players we got for him or whatever. And I think this is the same thing with Murray. I think they found I think Popovich found a perfect trade partner in Atlanta because it's a perfect fit. There's no better fit for a Trae Young backcourt than DeJounte Murray, and they found it. And they took advantage of, not even took advantage, because I think it's a win-win trade for what both teams are trying to do. And they are in the position where they want to be as a team.
Yeah, I actually think they got Murray for pretty cheap. Like when you really start to consider his age, doesn't have a ton of mileage on San Antonio. And then also his production, 22 points, 8.6 rebounds, 9.5 assists, led the league, I believe, with 2 steals per game. Yeah, led the league in steals, averaging about 2 per game. So like, that's what we thought Ben Simmons would be. That's what you look around the league of any guard who is not like a score first guard. This is the model that you want them to be in, and they already have, as you said, Matt. They already have their score first guard in Trae Young. So definitely a win from Atlanta. I guess the question now, before we move on, is where does this put Atlanta in the pantheon in the East? And let's pencil in that the Nets are going to completely blow, or maybe not completely blow it up, but they're not going to have KD and they're not going to have Kyrie. So considering that, where do the Hawks rank in the East?
They bump above the Bulls for the fun young team that has potential. I think they that's where they are in the power ranking. So there's a contender tier with Miami, Boston, Philadelphia, Milwaukee,
And they're not
and
in that.
no, they're not in that.
Okay.
And then they're like um they're like in the Raptors Bulls tier.
Yeah, I might put them in that contender tier, Matt. Like they are like think about it. I know we say it was a fluke. You could say whatever. They went to the Eastern Conference
Yeah, I know.
Finals. At the very least, they are like if all things go right, they are capable. And I think their team is obviously better than it was back then. You have they were a little banged up during that run. You're going to and not to say they won't be for other runs, but they have a really deep young team that's built for the modern NBA. So I would say I would agree with you in where you put them. I think they replaced the Bulls as the team on the cusp. But I think unlike the Bulls, they actually have some punch to them. I think they could beat a team like Boston with this talented line, or they could beat a team like Miami, where they're all kind of the Sixers, the contenders that you listed. Any of them can beat any of them in a single game, so to speak. So yeah, it'll be exciting to see Travis Schlenk again doing a great job with rebuilding and bringing up the Atlanta Hawks. Someone who
Yeah, not to be lazy, but I think they're very similar to like another guard duo team, and that is the Lillard McCollum Blazers, where
yeah.
they're not quite there, but they have respect.
Right. Well, the difference, and I agree with you. I think that if I had to make a comparison of the backcourt, that's a great one in terms of where they're going to lead their team. I think that the depth in the front court is going to be a lot to handle. But now moving on to what absolutely lit up. This was the true kind of apex of the off season. Maybe not. I mean, I guess when these two get moved would be the true apex. But this is one of the first peaks. Kyrie and KD putting on an absolute player empowerment clinic on the Brooklyn Nets. Both of them looking to force their way out. I don't know whether I should laugh or feel bad for Nets fans. Probably a little bit of both. But let's
There
start.
aren't any though.
Well, that's what's funny. All of the Knicks fans, all of the New York fans that you'll talk to say the Nets aren't really a New York team. No one in New York actually likes the Nets. There's one guy, Reed Wallach, who works for lop-sided. He's their senior editor. Is a huge Nets fan, was a Nets fan before. And he has it's like, as a Sixers fan, I get it. The knife just gets put in and then it starts to get twisted over and over again. So from that angle, I really can relate. Like it hurts. Like this shouldn't happen. None of this makes sense to happen when you have all the pieces to succeed and you just simply don't. I think that the writing may have been on the wall with like when the foundation is two players forcing their way out of their current situation or leaving their current situation disgruntled and joining up at a new location. It's like if you have a boyfriend or girlfriend that cheats on you and then you get back with them, like it's not like they're a changed person. They're going to cheat on you again. And that's where I feel like Brooklyn is at with these two.
And the sad part about Brooklyn, if you are one of the dozens of Brooklyn fans, there is that they would have won the title last year, but Harden and Kyrie both got hurt. Like they almost beat the champions in 7. They went to overtime. KD's shoe was barely on the line, and Harden was playing on one leg, and Kyrie was injured. And Kyrie being injured is a very common story in his career, to be fair. But Harden, that was the first major injury of his entire career. He had been an Iron Man up to that point, and there's nothing worse as a fan when your team is high profile enough to be made fun of, but you have no championships to like stunt the pain. Like when, as an Eagles fan, like when Wentz started collapsing as a quarterback, and everyone's making fun of Wentz, and everything was like, well, at least we won a Super Bowl, and it was fun. But like to have no like when the whole Ben Simmons stuff was happening, it was like we had nothing to go back on, and that's what Brooklyn fans. It's deja vu all over again. It's they traded all their picks for Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett, and they made a second round appearance. And then they did the same thing. Then they stunk for a long time with no recourse. Then they did the same thing again, traded all their picks for Harden, and they signed Kyrie, but they traded all their picks to assemble the super team, and it's happening all over again. And I really think the only thing the Nets can do is just trade for picks at this point. They can't try to win.
Okay, so that's intriguing. So you think that they should go youth? This is going to be one of my questions. You think they should trade these two for youth and for picks and just try and totally rebuild? Because I also have heard the other side of things where people say, you know what, they don't have any first round picks. They don't control their own first rounders. So there's really no incentive to being not competitive, especially when you have they really do completely control, because they're going to be sending the better piece in whatever trade they end up selling both of these guys off, trading both these guys off. They're going to have control of what they get back, who they get back. And I'm sure that's a lot of the groundwork that's being laid right now by the front office. But I just wonder if, especially listening to Joe Tsai and some of the reports that are coming out about why he's okay with blowing it up and what he's looking for. Essentially, they said, or I saw a report, I think it may have been from Windhorse, or I'm not sure who it was attributed to, but saying that Joe Tsai, the owner, would rather have a team that wins 40 games and plays their heart out than a team that has a bunch of superstars that is up and down, that the superstars run the show pretty much. So hearing that, I now start to envision, and we'll probably, I think it's better to do, and we have an episode coming up in a couple of days, so I think I want to save some of the KD and Kyrie trade conjecture maybe for that. But I think it starts to then narrow, if you do believe that report, it starts to narrow the possible destinations for Kevin Durant. And they've apparently wanted multiple All-Stars under 25, which is hilarious, because I don't know if any team has multiple All-Stars under 25. But I think, first and foremost, before we go any further, you do agree we'll get to the season and neither of these two will be on the roster.
I'm more convinced that Durant won't be than I am Kyrie. I think Kyrie is weird enough that he can just be if it just doesn't work out in the next 3 weeks, he just said, yeah, I'll play for Brooklyn, and then he won't play, or he'll play and only half try or whatever. But honestly, if you're talking about they have Ben Simmons too, and I think Ben Simmons would have a lot of fun being the best player on a 33-win team in Brooklyn with no one else around him to help.
Right. And then he'll go 20, 20, and 20. He'll average Russell Westbrook stats, and they'll stink. But he's walking around like he's Jordan. Luckily, they still have Michael Jordan. Thank goodness they have someone who walks around like he's Michael Jordan in that building, because KD, Kyrie on their way out. This could be a fun little social clip then to end this one off. Where does Kyrie, to you, on and off court included, where does he rank among point guards? Because there was a time when he was undeniably top 3 before he went off the deep end. Where do you put him now?
It's impossible to rank, but I'll say this. I'd rather have Tyrese Maxey than Kyrie Irving, and it's not even about age. For next season, if I could have either Kyrie Irving or Tyrese Maxey for next season, I'd pick Tyrese Maxey. And I don't even think I'm being a Sixers homer. If you told me Kyrie's going to play 82 games and he's going to try, I'd take Kyrie without trying. But I think that makes Kyrie probably borderline top 10, if I'm just kind of estimating.
Okay, let's do let's do a little exercise then. So I'm going to just lump in Steph Curry. We're obviously taking over him. Ja Morant, I would say we're obviously taking over him.
Yep.
Yeah. Chris Paul, are we obviously taking Chris Paul?
Yes.
Or are we just taking him? Okay, Chris Paul, obviously. Now we get a little fun. Okay, Luka Doncic, another obviously in my opinion. Are we obviously taking Trae Young over him?
Yes.
Okay. Are we taking DeJounte Murray over him?
No.
Okay. Are we taking Russell Westbrook over him?
No.
Are we taking Garland over him?
No.
Are we taking LaMelo Ball over him?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so right now he is sitting at about 6, 7. Okay, so you said Maxey, so I guess I'll put him in over him. Are you taking?
Yeah, I put Murray over him too.
Okay,
But
so right
I
now
can't do that to Murray. Yeah.
Kyrie is 8. So we're getting down to it here. De'Aaron Fox.
Kyrie.
Okay, so I would say I'm just making sure I didn't miss anyone. They have Cade Cunningham listed as a point guard. That is, I don't know if I agree with that one, but haven't watched a ton of Detroit. All right, I think we have our answer. He's 8th. He would be 8th. I can live with that. On and off court, I can live with that. I think if I was being salty, my realistic answer would be I would never want a guy like Kyrie Irving on my team. I don't think you can win a title like that, but he is supremely talented. Another title team who brought on another supremely talented player onto their roster, probably the biggest head scratcher of the offseason so far, is Brogdon to the Boston Celtics. Malcolm Brogdon gets traded for Aaron Nesmith, Daniel Tice, I believe Malik Fitta, and is it Juwan Morgan, and a future first-round pick for himself. That is absolute robbery, in my opinion.
I was so mad when I saw that trade. That's such a good trade for Boston, and he's such a good player for Boston to have. Like, he fits that team perfectly. I'm so mad at Indiana for doing that. They got one pick out of it, and the players they got aren't going to do anything for him either.
And I mean, on Indiana's side, I can't say I get it. I am almost there. Like, I understand the concept, but I just don't agree with it in the sense that Malcolm Brogdon just turned 30. He's going to be making a good chunk of money. You just drafted Benedict Mathurin. You have Tyrese Halliburton, who you want to grow. You have Chris Duarte, who you want to grow. And ultimately, Malcolm Brogdon, if he's on your team, is going to demand 35 to 38 minutes per game. He's going to demand the ball in his hands, as he should. But you're not going to get the chance to grow your young guys. And I think that's the big point. They also have Buddy Hield, not that he's a young guy, but he's another player who's going to demand some shots. So if you want to fill out your front court, which Aaron Nesmith is a young player, Daniel Tice is a player.
He's going to be back in Boston in a year. Somehow. He always makes his way back.
He'll be bought out, and he'll be back on Boston. So as far as the outlook for Boston, like, you don't really give up a ton, and you add a borderline all-star player. So as far as Vegas is concerned, that was enough to make Boston the favorite. I think they go from plus 750 just behind Golden State to plus 500 to win next year's NBA title. Does this make Boston the favorite then, in your opinion?
No, I still think a healthy Milwaukee beats them almost every time. And Golden State's doing weird offseason stuff that I don't really understand also. So they're kind of falling off. But I think people are acting like Boston was the second best team in the NBA last year, when I really think they were at times were like they're a great team, but I still think people are forgetting like Milwaukee was pushing to 7 without their second best player, All-Star Chris Middleton. Like, imagine that's like the Celtics losing Jaylen Brown. Like, it's a huge loss to lose Chris Middleton, and I still think Milwaukee's the favorite.
Yeah, you know what, that I think that does get kind of just blown over, the fact that really, like, and because Giannis is on the team, I really think Chris Middleton gets a bad rap. Like, Chris Middleton, granted, I don't know how good he would be on his own. It's kind of like the Klay Thompson situation where, yeah, he's prolific in this system. You take him out. Regardless, like, as far as how important he is for that team, the fact that they took them to 7 should be terrifying for the rest of the NBA, because it means that they're deep enough and that Giannis has grown to a point where there's still really no shutting him down. So a pretty bleak outlook for Sixers fans, for us two at least, as Brogdon goes to the Celtics. Now we have to ask the question, Matt, for all of our YouTube listeners. The pointer fingers are out. What's going on in Utah? Something very strange is going on in Utah through the lens of a very tired Endor High, Brian Windhorst. And he was correct in that our guy, our favorite, our boy, number one talked about player on this podcast, Mr. Rudy Gobert, gets sent to the only place in the NBA more desolate than Utah, Minnesota, where he'll be paired up with Karl Anthony Towns. The full package entails Malik Beasley, Pat Bev, Leandro Bolmaro, who is like borderline like a dictator, and you would know, Bolmaro. It's kind of, you walk a thin line there. Walker Kessler, the 22nd overall pick in this draft, and Jared Vanderbilt, another member of the front court there, as well as a 2023, 2025, and 2027, 2029 first-round picks. Only the 23, 25, and 27 picks are unprotected. 29 is protected, as well as a 2026 pick swap. A whole lot of pieces moving for one Mr. Rudy Gobert to make I guess I saw Thin Towers. Thin Towers was a nickname thrown around. I think that was another one in Utah as well, or in Oklahoma City with Chet Walker. But regardless, two bigs now reside in Minnesota. How are they going to make it all fit?
I think Minnesota really overthought this one, because it's like, oh, we have a really great shooting, scoring big, but his defense isn't there, and we need someone to defend down low if we want to contend. So let's do what the 2011 Mavericks did and get Tyson Chandler, except make it Rudy Gobert. But that doesn't work anymore because Towns is not a power forward. Like, he doesn't play like a power forward. He plays like a stretch five. And if he can adjust his game to become like a actual like play like a Tobias Harris power forward, because that's what he'd have to be. Because Gobert can't move from the paint. He's stuck there. That's where he goes. He doesn't do anything else. He shoots close shots. He blocks shots when they're near him. And I just don't think the fit works. And I think it's just a massive overpay. And I think what's going on in Utah is that they're blowing it up. And they got a lot of help in doing so from Minnesota.
I mean, we've gone too far. Like, this is many bridges too far for Rudy Gobert. This is equivalent almost to the package, not in turn, and the players coming back aren't as good, but the picks, it's almost equivalent to the package that AD got when he moved to LA. And like, Rudy Gobert is nowhere near the player AD. AD is almost as good as Rudy Gobert. I would take AD over Gobert on defense. Oh, I know, Rudy Gobert, all the awards. Oh, he's so good on defense. We know that that's a lie. And then on offense, he's actually a player who can get his own bucket, where Rudy Gobert is solely reliant on a guard getting him looks or a bad matchup. And I mean, I can't help but think guards and perimeter-based teams, which there are a ton of in the Western Conference, are going to just pick Minnesota apart with pick and rolls, getting switches. Yeah, I don't. Maybe their idea is like, hey, look, we saw what happened in that playoff series. Cat looked horrendous. We need to move him into more of a stretch role where he doesn't have to be as physical. That's like what I think they kind of came away from the playoffs thinking, and this was the answer to that. They have their youth in Anthony Edwards, and Cat's still not the oldest guy. He's in his prime right now. So maybe they're not super needy on the first round picks, but like, I agree with you. I don't think Utah's clearly blowing it up, as Brian Windhorst knew 24 hours before everyone and pimped it out on ESPN to the cringe of the producers, I'm sure. And on Minnesota, it seems like a very desperate move. New GM Tim Connolly moved into that front office from Denver, where he built up the Nuggets team. So I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. He seems to know what he's doing. But man, weird stuff happening in Utah and in Minnesota. Last thing before we get out of here, Matt. The 2019 NBA draft class is eligible for extensions. As I mentioned earlier on, we saw Zion, we saw Darius Garland, and we saw Ja Morant all get extended. max 5 years, 193 million with the chance to make up to like 210 or more. I'm not sure the exact number, but it's all the same. They're all getting the same contracts, barring some small, like well, I'm sure Zion has some injury stuff written in, and 5th-year options. But there are two guys who I think maybe have the potential to get extended and have yet to have that done, being R.J. Barrett and Tyler Herro. Do you think either of those guys get extended?
I think Hero does.
Max extended, I should say, to the max.
No, neither
Okay.
deserve it. Neither deserve it.
Neither deserve
I don't
it.
even think Zion deserves it, even though I know you have to give it to him.
That's
Because
crazy talk. We'll save that for the episode, but that's crazy talk. Go ahead. Keep going.
And it's just, I think someone like Hero, he's a 6th man. You can't give a 6th man a max. I know he's like an incredibly important player. If he was healthy, maybe they beat Boston because he missed a couple games in that conference finals. But he's an inconsistent player. He had a horrible year, 2020, 2021. He had a great rookie year. He isn't reliable enough, and RJ Barrett just hasn't done enough in his career, or I don't think has the potential enough, shown potential of being a superstar like other players has, that I don't think he warrants it either.
Yeah, I agree with you on R.J. Barrett, especially now that they moved for Jalen Brunson. They spent a good chunk of change there. And the good thing about these extensions, though, is that the team is able to go over the cap to retain their players on the 5-year max. So if they really wanted to, they could. I'm going to push back a little bit on Tyler Herro. And I think that maybe he doesn't get the full max, but I think he's going to get pretty darn close. He's a guy who shoots 40% from 3-point. There's not like even when you look around, like Davis Bertans got paid over 20 M's a year, I think, or maybe he's making just under, like he's making 18 or 17 mil a year, just based purely off of the fact that he is a shooter. I think Tyler Herro brings a lot more to the table than just his shooting. He's also good on the ball, and 5 rebounds, 4 assists. That's solid production from a guy who's kind of a shooting guard. So 22 years old still, and most importantly, he is 1B. Jimmy Butler maybe 1A in terms of the scoring offense on Miami. For a team that just went to the finals not too long ago, Tyler Herro is 1B. So maybe he doesn't deserve the full max, but did Tobias Harris deserve a max contract when he got it? Probably not. But the Sixers, it's more so the alternative. It's like, are you going to give him a contract? If you say no, there are going to be repercussions based off of, he's going to hit free agency. Now he might even cost you more money. If you think, hey, we want to retain Tyler Herro, this may be the cheapest way to do it before he hits free agency. So I would say I think they're going to give him, I think that they're pretty shrewd over there in Miami, the front office, very good at what they do. I think that he'll sign for very close to the max, but not the full max is my official prediction.
But I think that's a fair prediction. To be fair, Tobias Harris, I think, was 10 million short of the max.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, even though it's a giant. So that's what, the max is such a big number. So I think Hero deserves a lot of money, and I think he's a crucial, important piece of that Heat team. He's just short of the max for me.
Yeah, well, and again, those are the two guys we talked about. Barrett, we talked about Tyler Herro. That doesn't mean they're the only ones who. I don't think beyond that anyone will get a max like the top that we've been seeing go to Ja and Zion and such. But there are other guys out there who are going to get a ton of money. There are also a ton of guys that we talked about today that are going to probably still get moved. We talked about Atlanta, their core. John Collins could be a guy who gets moved. KD, Kyrie, and some other people still floating out there. Harden hasn't signed his deal. And there's Ayton, I believe, is a restricted free agent. Some of the big ones that are still left on the board. As they go off the board, we'll always be here talking about it, breaking down the ins and outs of the NBA offseason here on Straight Facts. Make sure, if you have not already, to subscribe on Apple or Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts. And on YouTube, we have weekly content pumping out, as well as some potential big news coming down the pike. But As always, keep it locked here on Straight Facts for Jake Alley and James Jackson. That's Matt Robinson. These have been the facts.
Straight up.